Firstly, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thank you for taking out the time every day to join us. My name is Barendse. I'm the co-founder of DGX. And it's my pleasure to bring you this webinar today. The topic is the future of data stewardship. And I know for the DG people on the call, it is an integral part of any governance program. And so in this session today, I really wanted to bring two experts in to really talk about what stewardship looks like today and where we're seeing it going. We may be talking about some of the issues with it. We were just on the call a little bit before, just talking about some of the issues that we face with data governance. So this session is to really explore that and then hopefully leave you with an idea of where we think stewardship is going. And so a bit of housekeeping before we get into it. So this session is recorded. So if you need to drop off or if you need to do something, you'll get the recording afterwards. There is a Q&A panel, so if you look at the top of your Teams, you should see a Q&A panel. Feel free to put questions in there. We will save questions for the end. Towards the end of the session, we'll leave a time for a couple of questions, but feel free to pop them in and we can look to address them. And I think that's really it for housekeeping. Let's move on. So a little bit about DGX before we go into the panel. DGX is one of Australia's few data governance and AI focused consultancy. So it's really in the tagline there, data and AI governance is really all we do. It's something we're super passionate about. We do events like this, we do webinars, we do face-to-face events, and we also do our flagship conference. And so ADG Summit, which is going to be in Melbourne this year, is something we're really excited. I will touch on that at the end. We also do training as well and education. So if you are looking for training in the DG space or stewardship training for your organization, we can help with that. And we do consulting and advisory. So if you do need help starting and setting up a DG program or training your staff, we can help with that. But enough of that. We're here today to listen from our panelists. And so I'll just share a little bit about me. I've been in DG, implementing DG for about 8 years now. I can't believe it, how long it's been. I started my career in NAB, and I haven't worked with Mangala and Luciano, but I think we were at NAB at the same time. We missed each other, but I've actually been a steward for 3 years. I was a data steward for 3 years at NAB, and so I definitely learned what works and what doesn't work. And now today, part of the consultancy and the work we do, stewardship is and implementing DGs is what we do. And we definitely see what's working in organization and what's not. And what I'm really excited about today is we get to have a discussion about what we think it looks like. Obviously, AI is changing things, not just for DG, but rewriting how organizations run and who does that. And so obviously AI is changing things, and it just brings the question, what is that? How does that change going to impact stewardship DG? And that's something I'm really excited to share today or discuss today. So the first speaker to introduce is Luciano Vicente. So Luciano and I have been talking about data governance for a while now. And so Luciano has been at ANZ for about 6 years, I think, Luciano, and probably 3 years. Yep.
8 now.
8 now? Oh, goodness, it's been 8 years. And how long have you been in the DG space now?
DG, I think around 12 years.
12 years. Yeah. It's a long time. He's seen a lot in that time. But yeah, thank you so much for giving up your time today to have this discussion. And our second speaker is, and so Mangala works at NAB, my old stomping ground. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've been there about 6 years now, Mangala, and across kind of risk and kind of the data space. And I think 3 years as a steward, correct?
That's right, yes.
Yes, but they may not call you a steward.
2.5 to be exact.
2.5, and you may not. I don't think they call you a steward anymore, but you definitely function as one.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Still, and all of the delivery and orchestration stuff's all data, but anyway.
Yep. And again, thank you, Mangala, for giving up your time and joining us today. And I'd say, from our previous conversations, you're someone who's super passionate about DG and also has a wealth of experience of someone who's on the ground actually doing it today. And so, again, thank you for taking part today. And so with that, let's get into the questions, the crux of it. So let me just get my questions up. So I wanted to start off with a question that I've been struggling with. And as I've mentioned, I've been implementing this stuff for 8 years. And so I'm still doing it with clients. And the question is coming up for me personally that I'm struggling with is the whole idea of stewardship. Is it something we need anymore, or is it something that is changed and we need to tackle different? So the first question I really want to ask is, do we even need stewardship going forward? And I want to start with Luciano's view of what he thinks. Where is stewardship going to go?
Okay, thanks, Chad, and thanks for everyone attending this webinar. This question is straight to the point. It's a very good one. So if we think about the traditional data steward, which became synonyms of policing access, manually approving definitions and chasing data quality issues after it happened, that doesn't scale, and it's quickly being replaced by AI. But if we, in a future stewardship model, everything is about providing more confidence in decisions, designing trust into data products, and connecting business meaning to technical assets, which is a lot more human, a human capability. Then yes, as long as organizations need trusted data to make decisions, data stewards are definitely needed.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I do feel like if we're going to rely on data, we're going to need someone managing it. Like whether we call that person a steward or not, I think is probably going to be decided. And what they do, I think, is going to evolve for sure. Mangala, keen to hear your thoughts on, do we need stewardship in future?
Yeah, I feel that our organization's getting there, right? As in it's been a slow burn for the last few years. I think definitely stewardship came into the spotlight mostly because of the regulatory component. Luciano, absolutely correct. But yeah, like the things like data classification. Is this private? Is this confidential? Like those are the things that I think AI will really help with. And no one becomes a data steward and says, yep, I want to look at the group information risk policy and tell you whether the data is private or not, or they certainly don't really want to be manually tagging critical data element columns at 11 p.m. But I think it's just what AI can tell you is that if something does look wrong, but it doesn't really give you the additional human overlay of the sanity check. And so I think when it comes to where data stewards fit in, like it's to really operationalize data risk management. And in a sense, as in some of the stuff that I'm doing now, like in my role as delivery, is to actually get into the sort of what's acceptable, what's material, who needs to own the fix. And as Luciano can attest to in a bank, it's such a big like organization. And I'm sure, Chad, you've worked as part of the ecosystem as well. Like it can be quite difficult to orchestrate or get people to own that data fix. And so that's where I think data stewards really add the value. Like it's to like help. AI can tell you like it doesn't look right, but then you make that judgment call as a steward to actually figure out, okay, who's going to fix this now, whether it's material or not. Yeah. And so I think stewards aren't going away anytime soon, but if the stewards are still doing admin work in like 4 or 5 years' time, then the organization's probably not doing AI.
The one thing I see as well is like how the crux of the biggest problem is fixing an issue. Like how you fix it could be a technology fix. It could be getting the admin team to fix it. It's never simple. And the idea that you're just going to get an AI to fix your data for you, I don't see happening. There's risk. What if it doesn't implement the right thing on production data? I'm not sure if I'm going to feel comfortable with an AI just going and updating or fixing issues on production data. Yeah, not yet anyway. So the other thing I'd probably say too is that data governance teams are usually very lean, right? We can't physically manage the organization's data. It's just not possible. Having people on the ground is always going to be something that we need. And so obviously we're going to need some sort of form of steward or whatever we call them. And then the other thing too is I'd say that it's the people in the business that know their own data and know the context behind it. Like the data governance team doesn't really know that. And so you want the business managing their own data. Ideally, it's their own data. We're not accountable for the data. It's them themselves, and they're the ones who use it every day and get the impacts. I almost also see stewardship is how you get them to manage their own data and handhold them at the start maybe, but the maturity curve is like you get them managing their own, right? So anyway, so I think we can summarize that as yes, we think the stewardship will exist. I don't know if we change the name. I mean, I've seen different names being thrown out for data governance in general, and so I'm hearing data partner used. I'm hearing data capability partner. I'm just hearing different names and people moving away from stewardship itself. And in my organization that I'm working with now, one of the clients I'm working with, do we call them that? Do we just call them a data champion? Is something that we're working through at the moment. Awesome. So we'll move on to the next question. So I want to keep things practical and in reality. And now now this is like the rant session, but I want us to move towards what do we see the major challenges? Like we've all been in this space for a while now, so I'm really keen from your perspective, what are the major challenges with the current steward, or the way we approach stewardship today? And we'll start off with Mangala first.
Yeah, so I think this one is pretty much, I'm going to echo what my last answer was, ownership, right? As in, we're really good as organizations, like using AI, as I said, like enabling to spot issues, but we're not really good at answering like the question, who actually wants to own this end to end? And so the remediation of the data issues that I see is, as the best word I can put it, is aspirational at times, and this is not just NAB, but I'm sure all the other banks as well. We're really good at getting down to the nitty-gritty when it comes to data issues, and especially if it's driven by the regulator. But for everything else, we'll put that to the side, or we'll worry about that later. And I guess my concern, part of the challenge and concern, is that AI is being used as what you said, Chad, right? We start imputing data, we start to think about, okay, maybe if it does hallucinate to a certain degree, as long as we put in parameters and a model, like it might work. And so, yeah, like I think fixing those data problems and finding the right owner is probably like the first thing that I can think of, like whenever it comes to a challenge of a data steward, because the role of a steward is not to actually fix, as in if we're here fixing like the hundreds of data quality issues that we see like around the organization, then we it's just not feasible, right? Like capacity is one challenge, but then more importantly, it's like, how do you find and ensure that data ownership or data stewardship is essentially everyone's responsibility communally, as opposed to just like being this central figurehead that's being given the data champion role.
I completely agree with that. It's you formalize into one person. It's kind of like, it's not my problem. I'll let the steward deal with it. Whereas, you want, like, if someone sees a data issue, you don't want them to step over it. Like, I want them to okay, this is a data issue. Give them empower them to actually do something and solve it, as opposed to just it's the steward responsibility. Yeah, exactly. Great take. Yeah, great take there. Luciano, what are your thoughts? What are the big challenges you're seeing, mate?
I can name 2 challenges, and including Mangala and these 2, they are all about dealing with people. So the first one is one size fits all governance doesn't work. Data stewards often need to deal with an uneven level of maturity. So some people are very well versed in data, other people are more business, or they are learning, like data teams that are starting their journey. And the second challenge, which is for me the biggest, and also a topic in another event from last week, it's the leadership buy-in. Data stewards are often positioned as a compliance team, and unfortunately, often asked to do everything, but with very little authority. This makes it hard to connect data management to business outcomes. Having said that, the hardest part of stewardship today isn't tools or framework, it's navigating organizational change and finding the right people.
Yeah, the people that care. I think that's always when I'm going in trying to find someone to be a steward or an owner. Like, it's someone who cares about the data and will work with you to solve those problems. Definitely really hard to nail. And if a business doesn't want to work with you, it's like, how do you deal with that one? Is always an interesting problem.
But it is not only the people who cares, but who cares and can do something about it.
Yeah, can do something about it. Very true.
No,
very true.
But I absolutely. I think, Luciano, like, really resonated with your response. And I think one like litmus test I would always say is just look at the RASI, like the responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Like, where does data stewards fit? And like most of the time it would just be consulted. But then somehow like data stewards are the ones that are like, hey, how come this data's not right? Or like, how can this be wrong? Like, you fix it. But then you're like, wait, but we're consulted on everything and we're never actually given that like accountability or responsibility sometimes.
Yeah. So I'll share my thoughts. So I think that implementing stewardship models, always the things I find difficult are ownership. And I don't think it's ownership from a data steward perspective. It's like ownership from an exec level. It's who's accountable, who actually is on the dotted line. It's always complicated It's never simple, and the execs never want to take it. And so at some point, you're going to sit them down and be like, hey, it's your data. You're on the hook for it. And this is what I need you to do. And so that is always a challenging conversation, especially in organizations that they haven't really cared about it. The truth is they haven't really thought about it. They haven't had visibility of the issues. It's been something under the covers that they don't really care about. The challenge is how to bring those issues up and actually get them working, and solving and understanding the risk is definitely a big thing or a hard thing to do. The other thing I'd say is also that stewardship has work involved with it, right? It does governing data. It doesn't just happen, and there's coordination that needs to happen. You need SMEs time. You need to get things out of people's heads. And putting this on someone who has a full-time role is always difficult. But just like everything else that someone needs to do, from people management and delivery and their day job, adding an extra thing to that is always difficult. And what I'd say to that is that, you know, in my learnings is it's really just making sure you're using their time very wisely. It's using it for the bare minimum thing that you need to. There's one or two things you absolutely need them to contribute to that's going to add value, and then you use them for that, and we get away from using them to do things that aren't adding that much value, like the things we spoke about, like classification and things like that, where we should be using tools to do those things. And then the steward's time should be really being across what's happening and across the issues, more of a strategic position for the data is my thoughts. Awesome. So now we've spoken about the challenges, and I guess the next kind of questions is really about, what do we think the future is, or how do we think stewardship's going to be reimagined? And so one of the things I mentioned at the start is AI is changing things a lot. And so what I want us to explore now is, we know AI is changing a lot, but what are we seeing when it comes to stewardship? How is AI changing the steward role, the things they do? Yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts, and we'll start with Luciano on this one.
So as we discussed, AI can be used to automate a lot of work that would be done by a data steward, like proposing data definitions, classification and tagging, metadata enrichment, lineage, and impact analysis. If that, which is a lot of work, gets removed from the data stewards, then the data stewards can focus on, instead of finding every issue, resolving the right issue, which is really linked to critical data, right? The way I see the data stewards leveraging AI is by automating all that work, focusing on the business context, CDE identification, and prioritize the right business issues.
Yeah, very good points. Yeah, do you want to add something to that, Mangala?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think pretty much everything that Luciano has already said, because to summarize, as in AI basically, from my perspective, it accelerates that kind of decision, the sort of the ability to decision, but the stewardship needs to make sure that, the stewards need to make sure that the business can live with them, right? As in, it's AI kind of helps you with prepping all of that information, but that's a big if as well. Can I just say, as in with large organizations, as I'm sure both of you have experienced, the lineage, the metadata tagging, etc., like that infrastructure is it's a slow burn, and AI will definitely accelerate that. But we still need to get there first, before then we can, the stewards can actually drive insights help the business, with the insights. I guess within the next, short term, I guess the steward's role is still dual. One is to make sure that the governance infrastructure becomes realized. And then after that, think more strategically around, okay, now we've got all of this data classified, all of this data lineaged and everything else, then we can actually provide added value into the business. Yeah. But that first part is still, I think, sometimes we think that AI is a magic bullet, it will solve everything. But yeah, I think, it might aspirationally, but in the first instance, we really need to make sure that AI can actually help us do the basics first. Don't know if, Chad, is that what you're seeing as well?
I think that it's obviously changing, and there's going to be aspects that are going to be automated. And so even with the clients that we're working with at the moment, we're creating data governance agents. So when someone can ask to classify data, and someone can and ask it to say an incident happens that relates to data. We can pump that in. It helps with the thinking and pull things together and policies and all this kind of stuff. So I think there's a bit of AI is definitely going to help, but I also note that there is a lot of work that goes involving getting data and the context to be done, which I think that these like stewards will be playing a big role in that for their divisions. I see the future of data and AI is we're going to need to build these contexts or brains for a knowledge-based brain for each division that has the risk side of things, that has the data, how it works, what it uses, what are the data quality rules, and you're going to need people to contribute to that effort to build that brain and maintain it. And so I see the stewards, or whatever we call them in future, will have to participate into helping build and maintain that context and knowledge base for that business area. And will that mean more work for stewards? It's an interesting thing where I think it's a struggle, right? I think there is a lot of work there. So who's going to do it? We can't fully rely on AI, but who's going to do it? And so I think that's the challenges that I'm really struggling with. Is it the business person that really does the heavy lifting, or are we going to have a centralized team that's going to be doing more of that with AI tools that's going to make that happen? It's really unclear to me at the moment, but I just know that there are stuff that's going to be in people's heads that you can't use AI to get it out. You have to get them to contribute and get it out of their heads. And that's never going to be an easy process unless we can figure out how to put our brains in AI, download information. It's always going to be a bit of that. So it's definitely something that it's interesting. And I don't know if I fully know the answer, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and the roles evolving. One thing I can say is the role is definitely going to evolve, and what they do for us is going to evolve. Yeah.
I think the stewards having the context from the business, from the risk, technology, data, enables them to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And I just add to, I think that the future I see is where I would like to build governance infrastructure that's built by the organization, that's almost like a brain. We're feeding in all this data, we're feeding in all this context, and then we have maybe an AI or something on top of it that's monitoring it, so we can we can see data issues coming there, or we can find issues coming or raising things where there's risk or concern. Now, the other side of it too is the whole AI governance side of things. So we haven't really touched on that, but I think that AI governance is definitely going to be something that organizations have to. Who's going to deal with it? I'm seeing this now. Like, there's so much AI happening. And I think that's going to just proliferate, especially when we start talking about agents. But who's going to have to govern that, and how do you do that at scale? I think that's a question I'm trying to figure out from my organization. I think there's technology involved, but there's also humans. There's also humans involved with that. And I'm also questioning what does a steward play in that role? I think they do, but I don't know what it is yet. So not sure if you had any thoughts on that, either of you.
It's corralling again. Like, I see AI as like data as being an enabler of AI, right? So in a sense, like, of course, data like governance like really needs to sit on the table. Like, when we're thinking about AI governance, it's because without the data, then AI becomes effectively useless. And I just want to borrow Luciano's like kind of answer before around context gathering. As the data governance person, like in the room, like it's your almost like I see it anyway, personally, this is my take. I see it as being like you almost get the business, the risk, the tech, everybody, all your stakeholders in the room to align on one agreement. Like, as in, essentially, if I think about where data stewards would be moving and in terms of AI, like AI governance, before someone uses that AI tool, right? It's like getting the AI, like getting the risk team, getting the tech team, getting the business like case to be like, okay, now we can use this AI appropriately, because they've got the context around, as the data governance, they should have the context around like whether the data is right and prepped in a state ready to go for that AI. But then in terms of the business case, even like security, who often says no, right? They need to be like, as in all of those risk factors need to be considered. And essentially the steward, if you will, in the room is helping move that along. I don't know, is that fair to say, Luciano?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mangala. The only thing I would say, in addition to that, is it's dangerous to have a lot of decision makers in the same, being part of the decision, because often the decision is compromised. Like the expert recommendation is compromised based on making everyone happy.
Yeah, you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I think what you say, I think there's a balance like with it, right? Like on the ground, what I'm saying is, yeah, you need someone helping drive it, and there's accountability on certain people, but you can't have too many cooks, or it's just you can't have too much bureaucracy either. It's going to slow down the whole thing as well. So yeah, there's definitely that balance. People need to be consulted and informed and give their opinion, but you also need to move at speed with some of this stuff. So yeah, definitely
This is true.
definitely going to be a challenge, like how we get that balance right. I think it's going to be the key.
Yep.
Awesome. So we've spoken about the challenges. Now we've touched on the future there. I'm really looking to understand next around like the skills, and how do you make someone a good steward? Like how do you uplift your organization? So I'm keen to understand, we'll go with Mangala first on this one. It's like, how are you approaching that kind of uplift of knowledge and make the best stewards you can in your organization? How are you going about that?
I think Luciano's already touched on it before. It's like that literacy, and it is one of the challenges, but then equally, I think it presents an opportunity translating between kind of the business requirements, like how data can help enable said business requirements, and also how, as in what sort of tech and like where tech and ops fit into picture as well. It's like I see when I was given the role of business steward anyway, I see that as being like the conduit, right, between effectively tech and business, because the best kind of like stewards that I've been able to like learn from and talk to are the ones that can actually translate tech speak without them pretending to be engineers, and then speak like the risk language without scaring people into compliance. And
Yeah.
so training wise, I think the skills you need is not really something that you can solve with just business data steward 101. It's more about like how do you interact with people, and even more important, especially with AI, it's about that humanistic approach. Like how do you build the community of practice, the mentorship, translate real scenarios in both for the tech stakeholders and also for the business stakeholders. Increasingly, I think where organizations are going to go is it's going to merge, because AI helps to bridge that gap. But as a steward and data governance in general, like you almost need to have that skill where you can effectively be the data whisperer to business, and then the business whisperer to data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. You're in that middle to make sure things happen. I think we were talking about earlier on the calls. It sometimes feel like you're herding cats because you're just trying to get people to move to a decision or move forward. Yeah, definitely agree. Luciano, do you have a thoughts on skills and training, how you're making and training stewards up in your organization?
Yep, I agree with Mangala. So the shift from technical data analysts, professional to human capability means soft skills are much more important, such as proactivity, curiosity, adapt quickly to change, and so on. But also data skills such as data literacy, understanding the data lifecycle and technology, data products, it's still important.
Yeah.
In terms of training, soft skills is hard to train, but I would say the guidance should be focused on business context, storytelling with data, and pair data stewards not only with other data stewards, but with business process owners and SMEs.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think when I see implementations go wrong, it's usually the team just puts together a pack and then just lets the stewards like figure it out, and it just never ends in the outcome that you're wanting. And so the way I approach it is definitely like I use it part hand holding them because they haven't done this before, and part education. And I really make sure I teach them like why are we doing this, like how it links to risk. Like there is a reason why we're sitting here mapping these CDEs. It's to help you and for you to use as a tool to raise risk. So I really make sure I'm educating my stewards on why we're doing it, how they're doing it. And you're 100% right. It's a soft skill. It's the critical thinking, but they also need to know some data literacy, because if they've never done data before, then they need to be uplifted to when we're talking about lineage, they know what that means and other data concepts that kind of come into it. It doesn't happen overnight. it's a program that needs to keep going, and it's obviously it doesn't just apply to your stewards in general. It's probably their whole organization. So I think it's like you're probably focusing more on your stewards, but it's a thing that all organizations need to do across and have some sort of data literacy program to uplift that knowledge and around data. Yeah, interesting.
And also,
we're nearing, sorry.
One thing I wanted to say related to your comment, Chad, is that we shouldn't try to write guidance for everyone. Otherwise, the guidance becomes too long and not relevant to anyone. We should have the guidance for those data practitioners, like data stewards, and let them explain to whoever they need to.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm trying to create like the eyes and ears. Like when I'm training a steward, they're going to be my eyes and ears. I want them to be the champion. So it's like they need to understand how I think and how I solve problems. So showing them how to do that, I think, is really important. So I'm conscious of time.
Agree with.
We've got.
Sorry. Yeah.
Conscious of time, Mangala, and running out. So this kind of want to go to the last question, then we can go jump to Q&A. The last question we have is, this is just advice for people. So the scenario is you are starting stewardship up from scratch in an organization. Like what are the tips, or what's the advice you'd give someone starting a program from scratch? We'll go with Luciano first.
So the advice is always start small, but with a clear purpose. Choose one domain, one data product with clear ownership and accountability, and prove value quickly through reduced work, faster decisions, and clear risk reduction. Also, in terms of leadership buying, which I already saw a question, make sure you talk using their own language, business language, not the data management theory. Explain, for example, how poor data quality will impact their business, and what are the risks to the organization if their own process fails because of quality.
Completely agree. Like starting small, I think that's like the number one learning I always say. Is like I always see people do it the opposite way. Let's implement stewardship and do 20 stewards at the same time in 10 different divisions. That is just so much work to.
Let's identify all CDEs first.
Let's do everything. That almost never works. And I agree. People, and I always get it. People who have done this before realize that in reality, you have no idea how these things are going to work in your organization in a new one, and so you need to be working that out and choose one domain to work out what works and then scale. It's just what happens. So anyway, Mangala, what's your kind of advice? Quickly.
I completely agree. I think just, start with the real problem, pick out a data issue, like it matters enough to leadership, and then you run it like end to end using the proper governance mechanisms that you can build out later on. Like it's an iterative process, right? And ultimately 100%. That's how you get the buy-in, because you're not trying to sell stewardship for the operating model, like nice fancy like tooling and or like stewardship model that you've built, but it's like to actually explain to people it's everyone in the organization needs to participate in one way, form, or another. One of my favorite lines when I go out to all the business stakeholders that I used to when I was a full-time business steward was just basically saying data touches anything and everything, right?
Yeah.
And so for the leadership pitch, it's always please fund it like it actually matters to you, because the time and then the nice to have like segment that you put in an agenda, sometimes like you get 5 minutes to talk about stewardship, right? That's not really it. I think it's actually like funding and then sharing it with your leadership, making sure it gets cascaded all the way to the analysts and whatnot, so that when we come knocking, like as stewards, people are not just going to be like, hey, there's a data compliance dude here.
Yeah. I don't. It's definitely not be known as the compliance side. Yep, Tim.
We got some Q&A, so I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A over here. So I might throw a couple of these out here. One of the first ones from Raghavendra was, in most places, the data stewardship is not a full-time role. And Mangala, when you and I had coffee a week ago, we were talking a little bit about this. So it's more stewardship is a hat worn by a person with the most knowledge about a particular asset, domain, what have you. When things get busy, that hat is pushed to the lowest priority. How would you guys deal with those situations? Or what do you have any tips or tricks basically when stewards are overoccupied with the things they need to do? They have their day job and stewardship.
Yeah, I'm happy to start with that, Tim, based. I'm sure we've had some conversations about this too. So it's, I think, like the most interesting part when you're like part-time steward is just this idea that, yes, you've got the day job, and then if you're assigned, if the data questions that you're getting are related to the use cases and the projects that you're working on, right? Then that's where the real magic happens. As in, you can actually just be like, hey, actually, Mr. or Mrs. Executive, let me work on the underlying root cause of all of these problems that you're seeing in our project is data. And so that's why I need to put on my data steward hat quickly. But there are times when you do get questions like that are out of the scope of your projects and programs of work. And I think that's where the conversation we were having around like AI being an enabler, like some of the stuff that I get around, hey, what's the classification of this data? That can be a 5 minute, if even 1 minute conversation now with like Copilot, and making sure you put in your information classification policies in an AI tooling that can spit out the response immediately. And then as steward, you almost just need to fact check that, and then you like validate, and then you send a response. But yeah, definitely, like if you're having like hairier problems around, oh, this particular data issue that I'm facing doesn't really marry up with my day job, that's when you, I would say, just hit the pause button and say, hey, actually, look, like as in this is going to impact my deliverable in my like day job. Can we have a chat, like further chat about it, to make sure that leadership's aware of how risky this data problem is? Like you do a little bit of risk assessment. If it's something really big, then you need to escalate. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mangala. In my view, especially in the traditional stewardship model, hatted role for a data steward don't work, is not appropriate. There is too much to do. But with AI, that becomes probably doable when a data steward is in the business solving business problems.
That's a good point, Luciano, because there's a second question from Yaya. Hope I got that right. Yaya, talking about the strategic change of a stewardship role. So they say, as AI accelerates change, stewardship has the opportunity to move from more of an operational support function to an embedded strategic capability. At least that's their opinion. What's your view around this shift from kind of operational data stewardship to a little bit more perhaps strategic function?
Yeah, I think that's a great shift to ensure data stewards have a little bit more authority, and they can draw the benefit to the business of having good quality. So they may create dashboards focused on those CDEs, which hopefully are not a lot, proving that the progress of good quality, like over time.
So maybe we can use the lure of being more strategic in getting more stewardship acceptance and having them a bit more excited about what they're doing. And another question pointed directly at you, Mangala and Luciano. Looking back, what specifically shifted stewardship from a theoretical, what they say in the books and what it should do and blah, 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 to something that delivered real outcomes in your organizations? So that's first one. And the second one is, what would you do differently if you had to start again or could start again?
Oh,
Big
That's
question.
who wants to take one? Go ahead, Luciano.
That's a good one. And it's hard to pinpoint something like that triggered that shift. But I would say it is the integration of the data management tooling and AI, along with the amount of work that they knew were like required to capture lineage, and those definitions that quickly get out of date and require forums to discuss new definitions and which one is right. That's a lot of work and cost, which required the shift.
I think mine's probably a little bit more boring, but I became a full-time like data steward several years, 2 years, 2.5 years ago, because of the fact that compliance kicked in. And I think with many large organizations, when there's a compliance requirement and or regulators are just around the corner, then there's a big kind of like hubbub of activity around, okay, now we're going to federate it out into the business and make sure that business have more accountability. But this probably answers, as in the previous question, slightly as well, like the shift from like the sort of the shift from stewardship into more strategic direction is around, I think we stop asking ourselves, like, is this field accurate? Is this seed lineaged yet? It's more like, it's asking, is this data set good enough to support lending decisions, pricing models, submissions into the regulator? And when you start asking those questions, then the organizations, okay, now we can justify like why we need to have like data stewards run around the business. If I had to start all over again, I think it's just thinking back to the data governance journey. It's definitely myth busting that it's not policy. That was something that initially at the start of being a data steward, I was like constantly just being like, this is a policy thing, everyone. We just really need to make sure that we get this right. And that's how I tried to buy action. But then I realized, like, within the first few months, no one was doing anything. So then I was like, okay, now I need to actually reverse the strategy and try and be more like business mindset, like having business outcomes, as Luciano has already alluded to.
Influential, which is a question Ashley posed, and I'll boil it down. Should influence and stakeholder management actually be considered a core competency we want to see in data stewardship? And if so, should organizations support that, or how should they? I know I've got opinions, but I'm going to throw that one at you, Chad. So what do we think about influence and stakeholder management when it comes to data stewardship? Is that important?
Yeah, I think you're dealing with people essentially. So that like people dealing with people, and you're dealing with cross-functional teams, and you're dealing with sometimes complex issues. So you need someone who can take those issues, simplify them, and then get an organization to solve that problem dealing with various teams. Influencing skills and communication is so important for that. And I guess the challenge is, like, if those are soft skills, what if your stewards don't have them? But that's where I think the central team needs to play support. And this is really, I don't think a central team is ever hands off. You're meant to be there supporting your stewards and getting your hands dirty, as you put it, to help them. And I think, but there's no getting around it. If we're going to be dealing with people, you need someone who can deal with people, full stop. Now, I'm conscious that we're getting to time now. I'm gonna try and wrap it up now. Firstly, I just want to thank Luciano and Mangala for giving up their time. And there was a lot of great insights from this panel, from human-centered kind of governance and approaching it as aiming to solve problems, looking to start small. And obviously we know that AI is changing, and so being able to be adaptable and iterative when we design these programs, I think, is all really important things that came out of this session. Also, thank everyone who jumped on the call. Yeah, thanks for giving up your time. Hopefully you got some nuggets, kind of gold nuggets out of this session. So it's just in wrapping it up. As I mentioned at the start, we are doing a conference in Melbourne, and we're looking to bring speakers in to be talking topics like this. I'm very excited about this conference. It's really, we're bringing in some of the best organizations really doing governance at the forefront are going to be speaking at this conference. So it's in Melbourne on the 20th. You can early bird tickets are out now. You can go to the website there to get more details, or you can reach out if you want to get involved or anything like that. Feel free to reach out to Tim or I want to end it with, again, thank you. And we also do data, I guess we call it data governance in cafes, where it's just a catch up to have a coffee. And so if you're interested in that, go to the website or use the QR code there. We'd love to chat about stewardship. It's one of our favorite topics. So if you want to have a chat about it, just reach out. But yeah, thank you everyone for participating and being on the call. And again, thank you to our speakers. But yeah, we'll close it out there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.